Well, Professor Oyewale Tomori joins us this morning, as you've seen in the opening slide. He's a professor of virology and past president, Nigerian Academy of Science. Thanks for joining us this morning.
My pleasure.
Well, many people probably didn't even give much thought to vaccines until COVID-19 came. We just took it for granted. The last time anyone heard about vaccines was when they were very small and when they give vaccines to their children. And now we're talking about boosting Nigeria's vaccine production capacity, and it's something I know many people are wondering, this is something we were doing before. Perhaps that's also why this COVID-19 summit held recently, where you also spoke as well. From your standpoint, what's your assessment of that summit and its effectiveness in getting anything done in terms of our vaccine production capacity?
Thank you very much. I think it was a good thing that they held that meeting, opportunity to review the performance over the last 2 years and hopefully come up with identified areas of success and areas where we didn't really succeed, and hopefully take that forward for future, because more epidemics will come, more whatever will come in, and this is the time to prepare for it. I'm actually thinking beyond COVID, because I know somehow it will sort itself out, but we don't know what is coming next, and we should be better prepared than we were for this one. So I think the summit was good. It has its usual, the usual talks and things that people say, but I think this recommendation will be the most useful. Not just the recommendation, the implementation of the recommendation.
How do you see that playing out?
We have to have a change of heart in Nigeria. I mean, to the way we implement things. I don't think we've done well. It's not that we don't have policies, we don't have recommendations, but we don't follow through. We don't sustain whatever it is we're following through. They start now, another 1 or 2 months or years. We forget all this. We set up another reform committee to do the same thing we've been doing. There's nothing new, really. Most of this, like I used to joke, that a lot of this committee, before at the end of the week, I would probably have written the recommendation ahead of the meeting, because we know what it is, because we failed to do those things. That's why we keep repeating summits and things of that nature.
So how optimistic then are you that the recommendations of this summit will not follow suit?
For the sake of Nigeria, we just have to be optimistic. And that was part of the point I'm trying to raise when I make my talk. And I kind of drew the attention that if we do not address certain basic issues within the country, we're going to have a bit of a problem. I mean, it's going to go the same way. I think the fundamental issue of our nature, our culture, needs to be addressed. And that's why I went back into history, the kind of life I lived at that time, what I'm seeing now. And that if we don't go back to those basic foundations, we continue making recommendations which will not be implemented.
Still on that same summit, well, it was organized by the Presidential Steering Committee. At the time, it was a task force. The chairman of the task force, had said that, look, he didn't even know that things were so bad in the health sector. Between then and now, and the interventions and everything that has come up, how much improvement do you think we have been able to garner in the light of that statement?
We've tackled COVID, but we have not tackled the future. I mean, it's an ad hoc thing. We're pursuing COVID, and we're forgetting other things. And that's the truth. I mean, one good example, look at the figures for Lassa fever cases in the country. The years before, the numbers were rising. Suddenly in 2020, PIM went down. Not because the cases went down, but because we abandoned those other aspects. There was overly focus on COVID, and to the detriment of other things. It's only now we're gathering ourselves back and say, And a lot of people were afraid to come within the health system because they were afraid of getting COVID. So they stayed at home. So some of the figures we're getting for Lassa, for other things, are actually because of the fact that the surveillance system was not robust enough to look at other issues. And they overly focused on COVID. And it has affected basically a lot of things. And that's what we're going through. I'm hoping that with this, we'll have a robust system which will look at not just an individual disease, but have the system in place. I've always had a little bit of quarrel with the CDC because they are overly centralized. To me, each state should have a center for disease control. which they are monitoring their own case. And NCDC stays there as the coordinating center. What we had with the NCDC was that they were all over the country, and it made them less effective. And whether we like it or not, I was joking that, they were running around the country like decapitated chicken. Anywhere there was problem, it was a problem. And I said maybe the NCDC should become National Center for Decapitated Chicken. Because really, until we begin to look at it and let each state handle this issue, and we have a central coordinating center. It is something that is happening with our genetic sequencing. There are 4, 5, 6, 7 laboratories in this country that are into genetic sequencing. It is the duty of NCDC to coordinate those activities. It is not, to have some of the centers send their samples outside the country. It's shameful.
So you don't think it's useful what's going on now, where they interface with the state's health authorities?
What is happening is that there should be some autonomy at that state level. Let me give you a good example. When monkeypox left Nigeria for the US, it was a state department within Texas somewhere that detected and provided. They only contacted their NCDC when it required getting out of the country of the people who travel from Nigeria. That's what they did. But at the level of diagnosis, solving the problem, tracing the people, was done at the state level.
It's quite interesting how this conversation is about, the pandemic, vaccines, and somehow I'm getting the vibe of restructuring in this one, ensuring that the subnationals are empowered, which is why you say you think the NCDC should be decentralized so that states can have more power. And, I cast my mind back to your presentation at that summit. You got quite emotional.
Yes,
and,
I did.
The talk transitioned from fighting the pandemic to a general culture in Nigeria. And I think for you were saying that, yes, we need to fight this pandemic, but there's a deeper problem which we need to address. So the summit has happened. Summits will come and go. I don't know, perhaps there's probably another summit in the coming weeks. And I wonder, where, if you were to say this is where we need to fix things, this is who needs to champion this, what would you say to that? Who needs to champion this, and where do we need to start from?
I raised the point about those foundational things. Whatever recommendation you make, if that individual attitude to accountability, to trustworthiness, to doing your work diligently, is not there. No matter what we do, all you need is one individual who is not doing his duty to obtain whatever it is you are doing. We need each individual who have a role to play. It starts from the government, at the federal government level, to make people aware that these are important things that all of us need to do. This is our country. I have a role to play. The government has a role to play. Each of us, it's not the government thing. Let me look at this. I'm talking about this COVID. The emphasis is the government is controlling COVID. Government is not the one controlling COVID. It's me and you that are controlling COVID. Because I'm the one responsible for getting that infection to the next person. If I wear my mask, then that infection stops with me. But if not, if nobody is wearing the mask, then we continue to spread the thing, and we get the mutants we're getting. And we talk about mobile phone. It's only when you carry your phone around that is mobile. So also with this virus, it's as immobile as where you put it. So there's a major responsibility for you as an individual. Government must stress that. That's what I'm trying to say. And that's why it goes down to the culture and other things. I gave an example of the time when we were going to school. My parents gave money to the driver. I didn't finish spending it. He returns it on his own journey. Those are the basic things that we're talking about. And until we sort that out, no matter the plans we have in this country, it's that individual who is not going to, that will spoil everything that we've done. So it boils down to you and me, making sure that, whatever proposal we make, we implement it, and you do your duty, I do my duty.
I think really this is a point worth exploring, but perhaps that will take us off the tangent of, vaccination and it's quite interesting point. Maybe we'll have to, schedule another discussion for that. But just recently, now back to vaccination, there was news about, vaccines expiring, and that got a lot of people concerned. In fact, it got that news to get the Ministry of Health to respond. And then they try to give some background saying, yes, we had this concern as well. We've been getting donations, which we welcome. But, the challenge is some of these donations are close to expiring anyway. Logistics, transport time, clearing them, they get into the country and it's almost expired. And that is why we have withdrawn, those supplies from the shelf so people don't get vaccinated with that. And that caused quite a ripple. I mean, we're dealing with the vaccine hesitancy and people get this news and you know how these things spread. So if you were to make an intervention, Rao, with all the reports flying around, what would that intervention be?
It's something we anticipated a long time ago. I remember in my Facebook, way back September, I said, we're going to get a situation where the European people will satisfy their people. They have these vaccines, this thing is about to expire, they ship it to us, and we will not be prepared. They turn around and say, look at them, we gave them vaccine, and they can't even administer it. That's what is happening. But we too should have anticipated that it was coming. 1 million doses with the large population we have in the country, if we have the right people in places, 200 per location, we could have done within 3 months and administer that. So there was also that part of it itself. How well prepared are we? We talk about logistics, yes, but we knew it was going to be. At the end of it all, I mean, I support the government saying no extension. They said if it's 6 months, they come around and tell you. That I support fully. But then we should have prepared enough to say, look, this is coming. And again, everybody has a role to play. The hesitancy also added to it. Because even though the vaccines were out there, people were not going for it. Lots of excuses. But then these are issues that, compounding the issues that started. The problem started not with this. When those fake news started coming up, we would have attacked them immediately. We allowed some of these things to stay on for a long time. And that's why people in government, even individuals, we're all involved. It's not this. A chiropractor comes and says he knows about some vaccine. His business is to set my broken bone, not to talk about vaccines. When a person who knows about vaccine hears that, he should immediately attack that person with facts before it becomes something settled. So we have waited along the line. The hesitancy came on with all the fake news. And so when the virus came, when the vaccine came, then people were not taking it. Again, the whole issue of COVID, it was the world living in ignorance, the blind leading the blind. When Bill Gates said we're all going to die, he didn't know the epidemiology of what is going to happen. It was based on past experience. And then we too, I think we have a fault. Because the West said it, we take it. And then when it didn't turn around, we were looking at COVID as the marker for COVID was death. When we didn't die, we said it doesn't exist. But it existed. It was there. People were getting it. And therefore, and that became the background of our thinking. That, they said we're all going to die. We didn't die. Don't mind them. There's no COVID. That kind of thing. But then the COVID is there. And those who have died, no. But part of the situation was that we never even started, a lot of us, to look at it and say, what is the epidemiology of COVID in Britain or in Nigeria? Should we lock down as they lock down? This is a kind of thing. Perhaps it's part of also some of us who are, scientists in the place. But also maybe not so, because sometimes you give government advice, they don't listen to you.
And I think this is what second time we've heard that.
Yes, I said it.
We spoke with a scientist
I
earlier
used the word,
well.
I said they call us UI, useful idiots. And I know what I mean by that. They're useful when they see our name to join. Oh, Tomori is advising me. But then Tomori gives advice. They don't listen. They don't mind that idiot. So they call me a useful idiot. That's what they're doing.
Prof, quite a number of trails to follow with submission. Let me follow the first one, which is about combating some of these reports with data, with science. And I think it's quite tricky period because for people now, the information is quite conflicting. So they understand that vaccination should give a certain level of protection. So they rush for vaccination. And then they hear that you still have to keep your face masks on. And I know we've tried to address these things time and again, but they're still up. We had a guest here in the newspaper review who was talking about it amongst his friends, saying, now I've gotten the second dose. Does that mean I'll get a booster jab and then perhaps another booster jab? So it's quite conflicting to a lot of people. So for scientists, they wonder, how do I even convince people who already go to Lancets themselves? They go to Nature, they download all of these, research, and they read it for themselves. So really, how do you give a clear-cut information when it looks like it is conflicting?
I said one thing, that we're all living in ignorance. We're learning day by day with COVID. We knew about this. Vaccines behave normally. You get your yellow fever vaccine, you don't go back for another 10 years. That's the normal way of vaccines. That's what we knew about vaccines. But we're having a smart virus, smarter than all of us. You know, it's coming with all these mutants and things of that nature, and confusing all the things we know about science. But then you notice that a lot of people were accusing WHO of shifting whatever. They could only act on the basis of the information they have. And that's the message we need to get at people. And we don't know everything about this. This is as much as we know. Nobody can tell you how the immunity is going to last when the thing has only been given for 3 years. I mean, for yellow fever, we've been on it since hundreds of years. So we can tell you with confidence that you last for 10 years. But this is something new. And that's the message, I think, in giving out the message, we should tell the whole truth. The ones we know, the ones we don't know. So that people were aware that those some things. But then sometimes, Cody, we said this thing with half of it, the knowledge. And like I was telling the government, I said, give all the data. The one you can do, the one you cannot do. Give the reasons why you can't do it. Then people believe you. But if you say, we are doing that one, and then you keep quiet with that, they fill it with gaps. And that is rumor. And that's where we have a problem. So for us as scientists is that it's only as much as we know we can give advice. So this is the information we have. But we also be able to go further and say, we don't know about this one. So I mean, this issue about getting boosters and getting boosters, of course. I mean, the whole idea is that we know immunity will wane. But it doesn't wait until 10 years for yellow fever, for example. So why do we expect? Normally, your expectation is that this should. But it's not. And we're learning on the way. Therefore, you know, this is what is happening. And therefore, you can then say, look, this is how much we know. And this is where we need to go, you know, some of that nature. And therefore, so I don't see any problem with that one. It is as much as I know, but then let people know that you don't know everything.
Well, one other issue that is that's very heavy in the news now is about local production of vaccines. Yeah. The DG of the World Trade Organization, the AFDB president, so many people are talking about it. Even the DG of NAFDAC has been talking about that since like March last year, that look, we need to pay more attention to production of vaccines, you know, in country and all of that. But the question then would be, what are the chances? Well, the federal government is talking about, you know, fast-tracking that. Just recently, there is a partnership for African vaccine manufacturing meeting that was held, championed by AFDB and a number of other organizations like that. We have had a template for vaccine production before, and for whatever reason, it went under, just as you described the other time. How optimistic are you, first, that we can get this done within the shortest possible time, and that it can be sustainable in anticipation of the next unknown pandemic that you talked about?
Thank you very much. Actually, a lot has been done about local vaccine production in the country. And in fact, this afternoon, as soon as I leave here, we're going to the board meeting on the bio vaccines to talk more about that kind of thing. Much has been done. But the fact that suddenly, again, COVID has caused quite a lot of problems. The well laid out plan for vaccine production in the country, when COVID came, it had to be shifted out because the partners we're dealing with were also dealing with COVID in their own countries. And as far as they're concerned, that was the primary issue. So any other thing you're bringing, you know, has to hold on along with that one. But I want to make one very important point. The local vaccine production Nigeria is looking for is not for COVID only. When we started, there was no COVID. So the emphasis was those routine immunizations, vaccines that we're using for our children, how do we continue to get them? We have agreement with Gavi. Gavi is going to go away eventually. In fact, Gavi should have gone away this year, but then there was a change. How do we continue? Are we going to be dependent on Gavi forever? I was on the Gavi board for a year, and actually one of the questions I asked them, is Gavi going to remain forever? Which it shouldn't be. Countries should be able to move on and take care of it. We can't produce all the vaccines, but the vaccine, there was an African vaccine manufacturing initiative with the AU. They've made up their mind. You are not going to produce, everybody is going to start producing vaccine because it's not viable. So Senegal produces yellow fever. All of Africa buys from yellow fever. Nigeria produces X. All of Africa buys from that. But then you remember, we're not united in Africa. I'm sorry, let's talk about that one, because our colonial masters are still drawing all the plans. If Togo, for example, wants to buy vaccine and, you know, from Nigeria, and he needs the money, and it is France that gives the money to Togo, France is going to dictate where that vaccine will be about. So all the so-called African unity is thrown to so we need our own independence in Africa to say that all the policies we're saying, we will abide by it. I'm glad there's this African continental trade something. How will it come out? Those are the steps we need to take. Back to the vaccine production you're talking about. We had our steps. Plans are there. In fact, right now, the bio-vaccine has got to the point where we identify the partners outside the country, not just technical partners, financial partners, and all those ones. We're working with them. And I said it only got stalled when COVID came. And everybody's attention shifted to COVID. Are we going to make progress? We are making progress. But we will get there. But I cannot tell you date because I don't know what other thing is going to come tomorrow.
But just as you said, I mean, it only makes it worse that COVID came.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
and just as you have also identified, if we are not ready for the next pandemic, there is going to be another problem.
Yeah.
In fact, part of the reason the AFDB and a number of organizations are coming together is that, look, this insult has to work,
that's it.
you know, is a little too much. I mean, giving, just as you also mentioned earlier, giving vaccines to Africa only when it's almost expired. So it just raises in my mind one point that the NAFDAC DG made about phytomedicine. The challenge that has been mentioned by medical researchers and scientists in the country has been that of funding for research. In the light of vaccine production, whether it's for COVID or for any pandemic or whatever, where are we in terms of the research? Because we all know that without the research, science is powerless.
Yesterday, I was at a talk, and we were looking at how governments have assisted in wherever they are, especially with COVID vaccine. And one of the first statements I read that the U.S. government consistently, for a long time, has been supporting vaccine research. Not only that, they went up to make sure that this works out, they go called advanced procurement to ensure. There was one of the companies, they signed an agreement, 1.6 billion agreement. This company is just a research company. And the agreement was that if you produce COVID vaccine, we'll give you 1.6 billion, which is approved by FDA. We give you 1.6 billion to begin to production. Way ahead of time. They're planning ahead. What's happening? I'm glad I'm aware of the TED Fund is making an attempt to get a national research and development fund, you know, which we never had before. That's the step to go. We've never supported research in Africa. I mean, most African countries, it has been an ad hoc something. You get one research. Even the money that CBN gave out for so-called factory research, go and find out, you know, really, where is it going to end? But the point is that enabling environment for research to survive is not the money you give. If you don't have electricity in your lab, if your water supply is not there, if you have to import everything and customs along the lines, putting charges on to get this cup, the customs is illegal and legal accumulation, all come into that one. Those are the things we need to change. Again, back to the point we're raising, that basic structure of accountability at each level must go through everything we're doing. Otherwise, we're not going to make it.
Talking about structures, what kind of partnerships do you think will facilitate a sustainable research, medical research and vaccine production system?
The talents for research are in this country. The enabling environment is not there. That's the problem.
So who will facilitate this enabling
enabling environment? Is that the business of government with industry? We won't need to work with it, but government has to prepare certain basic things. It is not in the plan of industry to go and get the electricity for the research center. That must be there. It's taken for granted. Your water supply, all those things, these are the things that government has to put in place. That's the enabling environment. We had that when I was growing up. I didn't require anything in the research lab in Ibadan. Electricity never failed at that time. Water supply, even if it did, we managed to, you know, have a backup or something. And we did our research without any problem. I didn't have to worry about whether I'm going to buy diesel to get my generator working. All those things that were there. And that's that enabling environment. It has to be sustained. And that's the only way we can get research going on.
Okay. Well, Markwe, my colleague in Abuja, has a number of questions for you. Markwe, go ahead.
Good morning, Prof. It's certainly good to see you. And I'm, just wondering, my colleague already made reference to the fact that you got a bit emotional at that third national summit. And now we're talking about vaccine production. You've made reference many times now to how things were and where we currently are. But are there bright sparks? Are there areas where you say, oh, look, yes, indeed, things might not be so great here, especially now that you talk about in the enabling environment. However, are there areas where you think that we can, if we follow the lead here, perhaps we could make some progress or, some remarkable success in the areas that you might have noticed?
A few of our colleagues work with a lot of people outside the country, to get candidate vaccines. I know Chris Happy at Redeemers University. There's one of the professor who is now the VC at Precious Cornerstone at this. They have a team. They are working together with other people. But one thing that I think we need to look at is that a lot of the success those people are making, they wouldn't have made it if they had not worked with people outside the country. And that's the point that we keep stressing. There's only so much you can do within what we have here. And those guys are doing their best within the facilities that are available. But we need to go beyond that. We don't need to be totally dependent on people outside before we go on. But there are a lot of it. Take the issue of vaccine production. It's not the container of the vaccine, the rubber bong you use, the syringe you use, all those are part of vaccine production. There are areas we can get involved in Nigeria, as part of this. In fact, one of the companies in the U.S., all they did, all these issues of this, the vial for vaccine, they produce millions and millions, and now they're making their money out of it. So there are stages and different paths where you can get involved. What is your talent? What do you have? Make use of that and get it. And then you can build up with other things as time goes on. I would want to believe that, like I said, it's not the people. It is the environment. I keep stressing that one. Whatever it is, my generation was, the environment was there to make us become what we became. I keep boasting. I never left this country for any of my studies. I spent 3 months, 6 months with, but all of my study was done in this country because there was the enabling environment. And that's what we're asking our government to do. You remember what I said in that thing? I said, this generation that we have, they are much smarter than my generation. Give them 1/10 of the environment I had. And it's all based on good governance. Give them 1/10 of the environment. I said, Nigeria will be loaning money to China. And we'll be begging, those people in Europe will be begging us for our own vaccines. That is what we need. Good governance in place, good environment. The bio-vaccine is a joint venture between federal government and me and Baker. And that's the way to go. But then that foundation, I mentioned today when the American government, the amount of money they put into it. Take the issue of the internet, for example. I just wanted to bring that up. It took 25 years of federal government, U.S. federal government support into internet before it became what it is. Now they are reaping the benefits. Sustained involvement, investment in research and whatever is what we need. Not haphazard, not changing with one government coming and another one coming in. The problem of vaccine production in Nigeria actually can be laid down to change of government, really. Yaba here, which is close by, I don't know where Yaba is, what direction it is. We were producing those vaccines before. Then we had a change of government. One military government came, one civilian government came. Each one forgot about all those things. Each one with his own agenda. Consistency in policy. One government starts something, build on it. Not say APC did this, therefore PDP is not going to do it. It is our country we're talking about. We are elected to serve the people, not to serve whatever, their personal reason. That's the direction we need to go. Private industry needs to get in, but there has to be some basic foundation which governments put in before private industry can get in.
We saw some fundraising recently by NIMR, the research institute, and I'm wondering whether it was something you followed. There have been quite a number of moves in recent times to try and raise money. You even mentioned TED Fund, and I think the Executive Secretary, Professor Bogoro, has, hammered on the fact that he intends to focus largely on research. So I'm wondering, we've seen a few moves in that area. Is it enough to light up the spark that we need?
Like you said, the journey of 1,000 miles, it starts with the first step. I think we've been right. I'm also on that TED Fund group that we're doing all this things. The steps have been taken, but then we need to sustain it. And I mentioned the fact that now I hope the next government that will come will not then start all over again. The issue of funding research in Nigeria is not a new thing. I mean, from Obasanjo's government to I don't know, Yar'Adua followed him, to Jonathan. Each of them have talked about putting money research into funding. Nothing has happened. But so that I'm hoping that what TED Fund is doing now, in which we'll probably have a deal or whatever it is that will come in, and a proper structure. And once we get that in place, I'm sure that irrespective of which government comes in, action will be taken. We are moving in that direction. Maybe we should have done this a long time ago, but it's better late than never. And I think I'm going to see in my lifetime, by the grace of God, us making this country to be what we think it should be.
I say amen to that, Prof.
I say amen too.
I do say a big amen to that. However, I just want to know whether, as we currently move on now, the Minister for Health has spoken about vaccine production and said that that's where Nigeria is throwing all its energy into, because we already see the challenge which we have with vaccines which are being donated to us. How optimistic are you that before this pandemic, because we know what it takes to, to produce a vaccine. We saw the controversy that came when this COVID-19 vaccines were produced, and the challenge that scientists had. They had said that it takes at least 2 years for a vaccine to be produced, for them to have confidence in it because of all the trial stages. And it would seem that we had to skip quite a few of those stages to produce these emergency vaccines. But this is where we currently are right now. Nigeria is about to start its own production. At least that's what the minister says. How optimistic are you that it will come out in time for us to be able to get our population immune to whatever mutation will come out of this virus?
Let me go back a little bit. The current COVID vaccine was not just started now. Before this COVID, there was SARS-CoV-1. Before SARS-CoV-1, there was MERS-CoV. I think SARS-CoV-1 came before MERS-CoV. These are all COVID vaccines. Actually, vaccines were produced for those ones. But because there was no epidemic, this system was abandoned. When this came, they just started and picked up from where they. So years of research are going on in making COVID vaccine in different forms. And so you have to add those years to the fact that they did this in 2 years. So that's the first point about this being made too fast. Now, one just has to be optimistic. I won't be waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning at the age of 75, coming to talk on this place if I didn't have any optimism. We have to be optimistic. We have to have hope until that we can do it. But then there are also the issues of, I mentioned that individual thing. There's a national program. There are individual interests. We must make sure that the individual interests do not override our national interests. A lot of the obstacles we are having today, I believe that part of it is all because we have to sort out what is national interest, what is individual interest. Once we overcome that, I'm sure we will move fast. And like the minister said, we're going to get to this vaccine production. Whether for COVID, I'm having a little bit of, I want to be realistic. Like I said, when bio vaccine was made, it was made specifically for the routine immunization. And we're going on that one. But COVID was another additional thing that is coming. We're also looking at how we can adapt into that one. As to whether we'll be able to produce vaccine well, again, depends on how long COVID continues to mutate. If it continues to mutate for the next this thing, of course, then we catch up with it. But if somehow we manage to stop it now, we probably will focus our attention on other issues that are coming in. And I think we can stop it now. Again, back saying that you and I, obeying those non-pharmaceutical interventions, we can put this virus and stop it in its track.
I mean, you've called the virus a smart
smart
virus.
Yes.
And, I mean, we need smart vaccines to deal with them
exactly.
as well. But, Prof, it would be a disservice having a renowned professor of virology as yourself with us and not getting some virology classes, as it were. So back to this, exploration of vaccines, which, I mean, is out there. A lot of people are talking about it. But I'd like you to address, why does a vaccine expire? And what happens if you are injected with an expired vaccine? I know we're going back to the basics of virology, but I think it's quite important to explain to people. So why does a vaccine expire, and what happens if people get...
Because they are biological products. Even we as human beings, we expire. When our cells go out, that's the end of the story. So also, these are all, they call it cellular products. And they also have a lifespan. And therefore, no matter what you pray, whether you attenuate it, whether you grow it in the cells, they have a lifespan. And that's the reason why vaccines will expire. Again, we err to be on the safe side. There are some, even drugs. It's not that they actually will expire as such, but you want to be sure. You want to be certain that what you're giving to people remain what it is. But like I said, the basic thing about vaccines is the fact that you're making them out of living cells or whatever. Each of them have their own lifespan. Therefore, you have to take that into consideration when you're talking about vaccines. Now, whether if you give, it is advisable not to give any expired thing to anybody, because once you put your rule there, and that's why I supported what the federal government said about the fact that we're not going to extend. If you tell me this is 6 months, don't give me, oh no, I have evidence now, make it 9 months. No, I don't want to go into that. And I support the federal government on that side, that aspect of it. And therefore, if that's the rule, we shouldn't change it along the line. But vaccines will expire because of the nature of what they are made out of. That's all.
So should we then reject these gifts, as it were, these vaccines, if we see that, well, it looks like this vaccine will expire in 2 weeks. I think the rule for Avat and is it Gavi is that it should be at least 10 weeks when it comes in country. But if we see that it's below that, if it's maybe 5 weeks, 4 weeks, should we start rejecting and say, this country, we thank you so much, but please, we don't want?
Again, I would say yes, and I would say no. Let me say the yes. The yes is that our facilities are not in place to use those things within that time. Therefore, it's of no use collecting them. But at the same time, I would say facilities can be improved. You can, when we used to do viral diagnosis in those days, it used to be 1 month. They're now doing viral diagnosis in less than 2 hours.
It used to be 1 month?
Yes. If you come into Ibadan lab in those days and you give me a sample, I will first inoculate into mice. I will see the mice grow sick. I will take that to go and inoculate, check my other thing. That's a 1 month. Now, new techniques are coming. And within a PCR, whatever, you can do it within a few hours or something of that nature. So also, we need to look at our system. The system of administering, of delivering these vaccines to people. We need to work on it and make it fast. If you cannot produce, then this is something we can control. Now it takes 6 weeks to get this in. Can we shorten it into 4 weeks? That's the thing we should be looking at, not saying we're going to reject. We should sit down at home and look at that one. Yes, we're doing it. It takes us 6 weeks to get this vaccine to my mother's village. Can we do it in 3 weeks? That's what we should be working on.
And what will that take?
For example, it takes back to, I keep talking about that human being. All of this thing we're talking about is because of the human nature. If you're supposed to collect vaccine at 6 o'clock and to take it to my village, you don't show up until 8 o'clock. That's the problem. That means you lost a day because you have to come back at 6 to take it or something of that nature. The diligent work, each of the steps we're taking along is based on human action. And if I do my own diligently, you do your own diligently, we can shorten this period.
Well, what role do you see for states, subnational authorities in boosting this capacity that you've
exactly. Both, first of all, there has to be national guidance with individual roles to play at the state level, at the local government level. But you see what is happening now. We don't have local governments anymore. Forget it, whatever it is we have. In fact, the issue of vaccine delivery is a local government problem. It's not even a state. State guides, and other people listening, the closest people to the people are the local government.
The primary healthcare system.
The primary healthcare that kind of thing. How many of the primary healthcare centers do we have? Some of them, you go there, they've been locked up for a life distance. Those are the issues we'll be addressing.
Do you think, my apologies, do you think that the summit that held recently referenced this angle?
Those are some of the points we discussed. How do we decentralize this to the lowest level? Primary health, national primary health care should not be an Abuja thing. National primary care should be as strong as the state as the local government. All power emanates from the center. everybody goes, so just like the states are going to go and beg money for their monthly collection from this thing. It shouldn't be that way. And that thing should go down at that level for the people to get closer to your people. And if the local government has strengthened to the point that they can do that delivery, then MPACD in Abuja will not be worrying about what is happening in my local government. Because there's somebody in my local government who is making sure and ensuring that is happening.
Well, talking about the local governments, the rural areas would rather even just use their herbs and all those things, which drew the DG of NAFDAC to talk about bridging the gap between research and these herbs, that we're talking about to boost phytomedical capacity in the country. How do you see that working out? What kind of cooperation do you see happening? There is definitely that shared distrust, if I can use that term, between those who have the herbs and the researchers.
When way back, I'll tell you one thing. In 1986, when I gave my inaugural lecture at UI, I was looking at how have people been dealing with viral infections, yellow fever, all those kind of things, smallpox, all those things. And I went down to, I went to the village. There's a guy who was involved with, and he was telling me something which I always remember. He said, we know how to give people smallpox. We also know how to protect people from smallpox. And we started talking. And he said, look, a person that has smallpox with all the scabs and things, if he takes any cloth that wipes it and he throws it into your house, he can give you smallpox. In their own days, they take that same rag, put it out in the sun to dry up those scabies. It becomes something they grind. Sometimes it was not properly dried, so they got smallpox. But they got it and they still the damn thing in, and they got themselves protected. But then we got educated, us, and then looked down on those people. The arrogance of ignorance is what I call it, in our own side. We should have gone back to those people. It's their livelihood. What is in it for them? When we're going to them, we should let them know that there's something for you, there's an advantage for you. If you are coming to me and you take it and I never see it, it's my livelihood, I'm not going to give it to you. So we need to get down at our own level as scientists, to get down to the level of people. Get to them and say, look, my coming in will enhance your this thing, will improve your whatever it is, and you're not going to be forgotten about it. What concerns you, you will also get it. Until we get that level of mutual trust in which I know that when I work with you, I'm going to gain by it. It's not only you. Then we'll get down to this thing. Unfortunately, it's oral matter. The man I talked to that time in 1986, I don't know where he is anymore, unfortunately. But I wrote that down. But there's so many things that are not written down, which we need to get ourselves. And that's why I call it the arrogance of ignorance. It's what is killing us amongst our educated people.
Well, I guess that's like a to-do list for the government, right? Well, Professor Oyewale Tomori, Professor of Virology, past President, Nigerian Academy of Science, thank you so much for your thoughts this morning. And the Virology 101.
Oh, thank you. I'll come for more classes.
Thank you very much.
Well, Sunrise Daily continues right after now. Please stay with us.